everybody, it's Jay Roberg. We're going to be taking a look at Game 3 of the World Chess Championship of 2010. The current World Chess Champion Anand is defending against Topalov, and it's been a very exciting series so far. The first game, of course, was taken by Topalov in dramatic fashion, made Anand look a little silly there, and Anand came right back in Game 2 and virtually did the same thing in kind to Topalov. Really outplayed him with the white pieces, and each player came out of the first two games with a win apiece. So they go into their day off, and then they come back. Today is Game 3, and it was interesting to just kind of waiting to see what they would play, especially Topalov with the white pieces. I think that the pressure was more on Topalov today than Anand, because Anand had won the last game with the white pieces, and going into this game, a draw for Anand in this game playing as black would be just as good as a win in terms of confidence level and momentum going forward in the game. So Topalov was definitely under pressure today to perform with the white pieces, and I'm sure there was a lot of preparation going into this game. And when it kicked off with a d4 opening, and I was really uninspired by this when I first saw the move. I was like, Topalov is playing the white pieces. He's trying to play for the win, hopefully, and opening up with d4 again in Game 3 after two queens pawn games so far in the series was a big letdown for me. Basically, I was looking through the statistical results that both players have had, and Anand tends to draw better with queens pawn openings, and Topalov is a strong e4 player as well, so I was hoping at least to see an e4 opening out of Topalov today, or another opening like a King's Indian attacks like structure or something like that, bringing something fresh to the table with white pieces that maybe Anand isn't as booked up on, because the first two games were queens pawn games, and Anand lost the first one, so for sure he overanalyzed that. He analyzed that really in depth. Going into Game 2, another queens pawn game. So, these guys have been playing queens pawn games for the first two games of the match, and to come out on day 3 and open up with a queens pawn opening, I was really shocked, actually. And let me tell you why before you queens pawn openers get upset with me. If you look at the World Championship history, I'm going to go back to 1972 when Fischer played Spassky. Fischer came out in one of the games, and he was black. And Spassky's team had invested a lot of resources and a lot of time into studying Fischer's play. They were looking at his most played openings, and they were really trying to book themselves up against Fischer. Fischer came out with an Alekhines defense in one of those games, completely out of the blue. And Spassky was like, what? And Fischer was basically telling Spassky, I don't know what you prepared for, but it surely wasn't the Alekhines defense, and now we're going to see who can play better chess right now, today, face-to-face, opening preparation aside. So I was really hoping to see out of Topalov today something different than a queens pawn opening, especially when he's playing for the win, which he should be after losing the last game. I don't think that you want to let your opponent gain 2 on you, especially losing as a white pieces would just be tragic in and of itself. But not being able to win with the white pieces after losing the game previously would be pretty bad as well. So I was rather uninspired to see the d4 opening from Topalov when I saw that. Nonetheless, Topalov is a beast at chess, and I knew that he's had a lot of success with queen pawn openings before, so he's definitely going to give it his best effort to win the game today. But I think from Anand's perspective, having lost with the black pieces against a queen's pawn opening in Game 1, and knowing that if he came out of Game 3 with a draw, the momentum would still be in his favor, I think Anand was probably inside a little happy to see a queen's pawn opening, especially after all the post-game analysis that I'm sure both of these players and their teams have been doing as the championship has been progressing. So nonetheless, let's get into it here. So what did Anand play when he saw the queen's pawn? Well, he just simply plays his pawn up now to d5, and Topalov continues now pushing his c pawn up to c4. So we've seen all of this before. It's attacking the pawn here on d5, and in this position, Anand opts for pawn to c6. So a very solid move. Basically, when I saw that, I'm thinking to myself, okay, and then, like I said before, he's just going to sit back, he's going to play smart chess, and he's going to make Topalov have to pressurize the situation, pressurize the positions, because Topalov is the one that would really want to win this game. Sure, Anand wants to win, but he's not going to make any mistakes that would cause him to lose. So, Anand's playing a solid opening strategy here with just pushing the pawn up to c6. Topalov continues now knight to f3, Anand plays his knight knight up to f6, and from here now Topalov develops his knight to c3. Now play continues from this point, and Anand takes the pawn now onto c4. So basically we're getting into some Slav lines, some Queen's Gambit declined Slav lines in these positions. From here now, Topalov doesn't worry about losing that pawn right away because he's going to be able to get it back, so he pushes his pawn up to a4, and these are very much book moves so far. From here, Anand plays his bishop up to f5, and Topalov now swings his knight up now to e5. And when I saw this, I was kind of wondering a little bit about the move. I think that another commonly played move in the position would be pushing the pawn up to e3, but nonetheless, moving the knight up now to e5 is attacking the pawn here on c4, because Topalov currently is down a pawn in the position. From here now, Anand pushes his pawn up now to e6. Now this is a committal move because if we look at his bishop sitting on f5, he's kind of limiting the options of that bishop to fall back and maybe work with one of those other light square diagonals. So it's kind of a committal move, and Topalov actually jumps right over that, and he plays his pawn up to f3. So you know when e4 is coming to attack that bishop. From here though, Anand plays his pawn up now to c5, so he's attacking the pawn on d4, and Topalov doesn't worry about that right away though, and he pushes his own pawn up now to e4, attacking the bishop on f5, so that bishop falls back, and basically this bishop is kind of like not really accomplishing a great deal now anymore because the squares f5 have been taken away from it. There's really no point coming to h5 at the moment, so the bishop, Topalov has pretty much rendered that bishop useless for Anand for the short term, which was a nice positional play from Topalov, even though he's facing the potential of the pawn capturing here on d4, but that's not a big problem for him. He can handle that. So from here now, Topalov plays his bishop up now to e3 to give that pawn another defender, and Anand captures the pawn here on d4. Topalov recaptures with the queen, and the ladies come off the board here on move 10. So Topalov recaptures here on d4, and from here Anand swings his knight over to d7, attacking the knight here on e5. Topalov doesn't want to leave that knight there because if he recaptures the dark square bishop, black's going to be able to push the f-pawn up here and basically gain some space. So from here, Topalov captures the knight here on d7, and Anand recaptures, and now Topalov brings his bishop up now to c4. So Topalov definitely has some nice strong central presence here at the game so far. So things are definitely looking, favorable for him in this position. From here, Anand plays his pawn up now to a6, and now Topalov's bishop isn't that great. It's sitting here on c4. We have the b5 square taken away. We have the d5 square taken away. So not only does Anand have kind of a hemmed-in bishop, but Topalov's bishop isn't doing a great deal either. So from this position now, Topalov swings his rook over to the c file, wants to gain some influence on that file, and from here now Anand plays his rook over now to g8. And this is kind of an important move because we have this dark square bishop sitting on d4 bearing down on this pawn here on g7, kind of making this bishop have to stay there to protect it. So now that the rook's over here on g8, it liberates this bishop to get into the action. So it was a good move from Anand. And from here now, Topalov pushes his pawn up to h4. He's going to work towards harassing this trapped bishop. In reply, Anand pushes his pawn up now to h6 to give that bishop a retreating square to h7 if necessary. And from here now, Topalov brings his king up now to e2. So his rooks are connected in the position. From here now, Anand brings his own bishop now to d6, so that bishop now is free to move because of the rook sitting on g8 defending that pawn can do so. And he picks a pretty good square, giving him access along a number of dark square diagonals in case he wants to reroute the bishop back to b8 up to a7 at some point. Of course, he's got access along these dark square diagonals as well. So just kind of a centralizing move with his bishop. From here now, Topalov attacks that light square bishop sitting on g6, and Anand retreats that now. So once again, the bishop's still kind of hemmed in, doesn't really have any good options. So Topalov has done a really good job at kind of negating that piece. But we also have to remember that Topalov is sitting on a light square bishop on c4 that's not in the best position either. So there really is no big positional advantage for both players in terms of these bishops that don't have a lot of scope. So facing this position, Topalov decided to push his pawn up now to a5. This prevents the b pawn from coming down, also gives his knight a potential outpost there on b6, and Anand plays king to e7. Now, I always kind of remember back to game one when Anand really got punished for king safety, and I don't think that we're ever going to see that from him in this match moving forward. In terms of having his king exposed, Topalov was able to sacrifice some material and get the win. So Anand's just playing it safe here, plays his king up to e7. There is no danger to the king in that position. Now his rooks are connected and he can start to bring those into the action. Now if we go back one move though, another move that Anand could have tried would have been bishop to b4. And this of course is attacking the unprotected pawn on a5. c5. It's also attacking the knight on c3, although the knight does have a defender. But basically this forces Topalov to play rook over to a1 to defend that pawn. Now it's kind of a pressing move a little bit. You know, it's definitely an attacking style move. And if we go back here one move, I don't think Anand was interested in this. And I kind of get the feeling that, you know, as I said in the beginning of the video, that Anand really didn't want to take any substantial risks if he didn't have to. And in the position here, after moving king to e7, there are no substantial risks. He's got a strong position to work from in terms of a defensible position. And Topalov, once again, the ball's in his court to bring the pressure to Anand in this position. So I think that even though b4 was an option for Anand to play, I think that, you know, looking at the position, he just wanted to keep it simple, played his king up to e7, and basically said to Topalov, you know, the ball's in your court. I don't really have any substantial weaknesses. You don't have any substantial, you know, advantage in this position. I'm just going to play chess. You know, I'm going to try to win, but I'm not going to stick my neck out there if I don't have to try to get that win. So definitely a solid defensive strategy from Anand so far in the game. So from this position, Topalov swings his knight over to a4, potentially eyeing up b6 at some point. And from here now, Anand pushes his pawn up now to f6. So further cutting off the scope of the bishop sitting here on d4 and basically liberating this rook to join in the action. So not only does he have connected rooks, but now he can use both of them because this rook is no longer married to the protection of the g7 pawn. So nice little move from Anand. Facing this position, Topalov decided to play pawn up to b4, and he obviously wanted Anand to take this pawn, but you know, as I was looking at the position, I didn't use a lot of computer analysis in this game, but I was curious to see what would happen here, you know, if Anand does come in and take the pawn. Now, in the game, Anand simply played his rook over to c8, but if we go over one move, if he does take the pawn here with the bishop, Topalov can play his rook over to b1, attacking the bishop. The bishop scores the pawn now on a5, and Topalov gets a pawn on b7. So he gets a rook onto the 7th. From best play in this position, Anand can swing his rook over to b8. The rooks can come off here, so Topalov does end up getting a rook here on the 7th rank. But in terms of positional strength, you know, after king over to d6, I'm not too sure exactly, you know, what kind of benefit that would be. I guess it would kind of, you know, liven the position up a little bit. Maybe Anand would be more susceptible to make a mistake in this position. It's tough to say. But nonetheless, Anand avoided that completely and simply swung his rook over here to c8. And from here, Topalov now swings his bishop up now to c5. So Anand takes with his bishop. Topalov recaptures with the pawn. So we have an isolated c pawn here. It's going to be kind of a weak pawn moving forward in the position. And from here now, Anand plays his rook up now to c7. Now, if we go back a move in this position, Anand couldn't have captured that pawn right away, even though there is two attackers on there, because after the knight comes down to take the pawn, Topalov can simply play knight up now to b6, forking the rooks, and that of course would just benefit Topalov. So that it wouldn't be good at all for Anand to try to take advantage of that isolated weak pawn here on c5 right away. So from this position now, like I said, Anand just simply played his rook up to c7. Topalov now swings his knight up to b6, attacking the rook, but in the process of doing so, he's not just attacking the rook, he's also taking the option from Anand, placing his other rook on c8. That's going to help Topalov defend this c5 pawn to, you know, prevent a whole bunch of attackers from getting on it. So from here, Anand swings his rook over now to d8, and Topalov now captures the knight, and Anand recaptures, and, you know, Anand's in a very solid position here. Topalov is definitely going to have to work towards, you know, mixing things up a little bit, and there's always the danger when you're trying to press a position that you might make a mistake and your opponent just jumps all over it. So Topalov has to be careful, but at the same time, he has to be aggressive because he is playing for the win. So it's a fine line that he's got to walk. So from this position, Topalov swings his bishop to d3. That opens up access for his c-rook to defend the pawn now on c5. And from here, Anand plays bishop to g8. Finally able to get that bishop onto a different square, and it's not going to take him long to open up that light square diagonal to get that bishop into play. And there's not really a lot that Topalov's going to be able to do to stop it. Now Topalov plays pawn up now to c6. So he's attacking the pawn on b7. He's also attacking the rook on d7. And Anand's got a couple options in this position. What Anand elected for in the game was simply rook over now to d6. Another try for Anand would have been just to take the pawn. And it looks like Anand gets a pawn in the position, but it turns out that he doesn't, because with best play, Topalov can double up the rooks here after Anand hits a check and the rooks come off the table. Topalov is going to be able to come in and score up that pawn on a6. Material is going to be equal, but once again, it's a little bit more of a complicated position, and I think Anand, like we talked about before, is trying to avoid that at all costs. So instead of doing something like that, he simply played his rook now to d6, giving two attackers that pawn. Of course, from this position now, Topalov does take the pawn now on b7, and Anand recaptures, and in the process of doing so, he's basically not letting Topalov bring out that rook on h1. If there would have been some kind of a rook trade, Topalov gets to bring that rook out for basically free. So Anand's basically saying, okay, Topalov, you're going to have to develop your own pieces. I'm not going to do it for you. So your rook on h1 is just going to sit there for a while. So from here now, Topalov brings his rook up to c3, so we have a rook lift. He's going to be doubling up his rooks at some point, and Anand now plays his bishop now to f7, attacking the pawn now on h5, kind of marrying this rook here on h1 to the defense of that pawn. This forces Topalov to always consider that. So he plays king up now to e3. From here now, Anand brings his bishop to e8, so it's still attacking this pawn on h5, and now Topalov has to play a move to defend that pawn, otherwise he can't bring his rook on h1 into the game. So we have a very static pawn structure forming up here on the king side castle position of white. From this position now, Anand pushes his pawn up to e5, further solidifying those pawns. So basically, with the structure as is, anybody who moves a pawn is going to lose a pawn, so there's nothing that you're going to be able to do with these pawns unless you have pieces supporting them. So the pawns are definitely locked in this position. From here now, Topalov does double up his rooks. He gets a c file, so he definitely has pressure on the c file, but the question is he going to be able to use it? Now, he does have a couple good things working in the position for him. First of all, he has a pawn now on d6 that he's attacking with his light square bishop. So he can try to take advantage of that if the rook on d6 ever moves. So Anand kind of has to worry about that pawn a little bit, the defense of that pawn. But other than that, there's not really a lot going on in this position. From here now, Anand pushes his bishop now to d7, just basically giving it a different square to sit on. It doesn't really change a lot of the options for the bishop, other than maybe at some point coming down to c8 if allowed. But with Topalov's rooks bearing down on that c-file, that's not really going to happen. So it's kind of a passive move in the position. Of course, it does have another benefit in that now Anand could, if he wanted to, swing some rooks over here onto this side of the board, utilizing his home rank if he wanted to. So I get, it's just basically a safe move in the position to play for Anand. From here now, Topalov swings his rook up now to c5, so this pawn now has a defender, and from here Anand plays his bishop up now to b5. So kind of a pressing move for Anand now. It's a little bit of a change in the game. He wants to get the material off the board. He wants to trade down the material, and like we talked about at the beginning, a draw is good for Anand in this position, especially coming off of a win. So from here now, Topalov takes the bishop. Anand recaptures with the pawn, so Anand has a pawn now on the b file. Topalov has a pawn on the a file. They're both pass pawns, and there's going to be a little bit of action here with these pawns. From here, Topalov swings his rook over to b1, so we have two attackers now on the pawn on b5, but Anand simply has to push his pawn to b4, and now there's only one attacker again. From here, Topalov brings his rook up now to b3 to prevent that pawn from coming down any farther, and Anand now attacks the pawn on the a file by swinging his rook over to a6. So we're definitely getting some action on this side of the board with these pawns. From here now, Topalov decides to bring his king into the action, and Anand responds in kind by doubling up on the a file. He's going to take that pawn regardless of what Topalov does, but in the process of doing so, he's going to say, okay, I'm going to take your a pawn, you can have my b pawn, which is basically what happens. And when the rook comes off, we have a rook versus rook. We have a very locked down pawn position, and from here on in, it's pretty much self-explanatory as to what happens. We have some repetitive checks here, and it's a drawn game. Now, I know I did say that I wasn't going to cover a drawn game, but then I got to thinking, well, I'm trying to do a series of this, and if I have game 1, game 2, and then all of a sudden game 4, that might be a little bit confusing. So I've decided to do the draws moving forward now. And on top of that, I also think that the draws are a really good indicator of the momentum of the match. Like we talked about, Topalov lost the last game. He came into this game with the white pieces. He really should have been playing hard for the win. Anand came away with a draw. So for the last 2 games, Topalov has not been able to defeat Anand over the chessboard. And that's a definite indicator of the momentum of this match. Going into tomorrow, Anand's definitely going to play for the win with the white pieces, but he's not going to overreach. I don't think that Anand is ever going to overreach in this match. It's not his style. The pressure's definitely going to be on for Topalov to, at bare minimum, achieve the draw tomorrow with the black pieces, going into the next game again with the white pieces. So another shot at beating Anand over the board. Otherwise, we might just see Anand totally run away with this match. So take care. Hope you enjoy the video, and we'll see you next time.